Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today it's a little bit of a different one from the ones I've been doing recently, which have just been gaming videos. However, today is we're getting ready to start on a project that I've been wanting to do for a while. We're going to be talking about all the presidents of the United States of America. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, so boring. History's boring. I hate history. Okay, well, I don't blame you. It's not that I hate history. I love history. One of my favorite subjects. It is my favorite subject. But I can get how it's not really appealing to everyone. So I'll do my best to keep it interesting. So let me lay down the ground rules. First off, we're going to talk about 5 presidents per video, except for the last one, because we're only going to do 3, because that's all who are left. We're also only doing 44, and we're only doing 44. Well, technically, we're ranking 42. The reason is because 3 are being cut. One is because Grover Cleveland is considered 2 presidents, and I'm not going to rank him twice. Annoying, so we're not even going to do that. It's stupid. Another thing is that we also have, and then of course there's William Henry Harrison, who didn't last long enough and was sick during his whole presidency, so we really can't rank him. And I guess I guess I kind of have a place for him, but we won't mention it. He's just gonna be in the corner. Just not important at all. And finally, we're not going to be doing Trump because his presidency isn't technically over yet. So until then, and until we have a little bit of time to process it, there will be no video made on him. Maybe in the future, I don't know. Maybe this can continue to be a series. But of course we still have those 42 to cover. 43 technically. But we're still going to cover Henry Harrison, just barely. Maybe I'll get Dylan to do like a funny joke where he pretends to be sick or something. I don't know. We'll work it out. So, without further ado, let's start out with the first and one of our most popular presidents, George Washington. So, George Washington is honestly one of the 2 presidents that anyone can practically name. Him and Lincoln, of course. I mean, you could probably name a bunch of others, but these are the 2 common ones. Everyone knows. As soon as you start learning, everyone knows who George Washington and Lincoln are. They're 2 of our best presidents, in my opinion. But Washington had probably one of the hardest jobs to deal with, because he had to basically start out the nation, along with other presidents, of course. But he was first. So what did he do? Well, one of his biggest things was the Judiciary Act of. I also have some notes here, so I'm going to be looking down to read these, so bear with me. The Judiciary Act of 1789. This basically set up the Supreme Court, how the courts worked. Basically, how the Supreme Court works, what the Supreme Court had jurisdiction over, and of course, everything. Set up and also told. It was basically the people who were enforcing the law. They were part of enforcing the law. They weren't exactly the police, they were the judges, basically. Another smart thing Washington did was create a cabinet. He knew he couldn't just have all the ideas. So, of course, he created his cabinet. Some noteworthy members of it was Jefferson, Secretary of State, who we'll talk about later, and Alexander Hamilton, Secretary of Treasury. Now, since the Revolutionary War just happened, we owe some money to people who we bought stuff from. So Hamilton had a plan. We'll set up a federal bank, and of course, we'll put on some taxes. Even though that says what we weren't going to do, it was somewhat justified in the time period. One of these big ones were the tax on whiskey. Basically, and this was a bit of a problem. See, farmers would have extra grain, and that grain would be turned into whiskey. but now they were getting and it was just extra revenue that they needed. This helped some farmers survive. Of course, Jefferson didn't like it because he had his idea of America should just be this big farmer's utopia that it relied on everyone else for the industrial needs, which kind of backfired horribly, which we'll get into later with Jefferson. But honestly, so when people get mad, they start protesting, and when they get really mad, they start rebelling, like we did. Because, So they start rebelling, and so Washington realizes we gotta put this down immediately. So instead of just sending troops over there, he decided to get on a horse and lead the troops there to the glorious battle. I'm just kidding. There was no glorious battle. And the reason was everyone was too scared to go up against Washington. The guy who, general of the Continental Army, that guy. Yeah, we're not going up against him. No way. So the rebellion fizzled out pretty quickly. Another big thing he had to worry about was foreign affairs. At this point, France and Britain were on the verge of war at this point, and the French Revolution was also going on. Now, France helped us in the war, so that was a reason we kind of needed to feel like we needed. But we were too weak in a financial and a military state. We just weren't really ready to fight another war, let alone help fight another war. So Washington decided, okay, let's just stay neutral in this whole thing and let's not get involved. And honestly, in my opinion, that probably was the best idea at the time, at least. At least, maybe not, and maybe staying neutral forever. And surprisingly enough, we were able to keep that up for a while until NATO, but, it was a different time. But for now, I honestly think staying neutral was probably the best idea. So saying neutral as in didn't join any alliances. So, let's move on. He also admitted more states into the Union, like North Carolina, Rhode Island, Vermont, Kentucky, Tennessee. And honestly, people wanted him to serve and he kept winning unanimously. He was really popular. And they wanted him to just basically serve as long as he lived. But he decided that he had to get he wanted to give up after one term, but he was convinced otherwise. But after 2 terms, he decided, okay, it's time to go. My country doesn't need me anymore. Well, it doesn't need me to be president. I can't be king, okay? That can't be it. I mean, granted, he could have served that 3rd term, because he was could have served a few more terms. He was gonna die soon. He would die soon anyways, but who knows? Besides FDR, who really wants to die? Well, I mean, a ton of presidents have died in office, but, who really feels like running till they die? We'll get into those people later, but. So, in his farewell address, he set some precedents. 2 terms, the importance of national unity, no parties, let's avoid political parties, and avoid foreign affairs, just avoid foreign affairs for the most part, unless they involved us. Like, don't get involved in something. That would later be ignored. All of this, and as you can kind of tell, also don't burden future generations with debt. If anyone who knows anything about history knows we didn't keep, any of these promises. 0, honestly. But, I guess we tried. I don't really know what to say. Okay, brief topic. Yeah, he owned slaves. It was a norm. I don't find some of the slavery laws, like the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793 and the Slave Trade Act of 1794, I don't particularly like those, but they don't knock them down that much because the time period, it was normal. Alright, there we go. That's the longest segment of this video, guys, honestly. George Washington. Move on to John Adams. So John Adams was Washington's VP. and then ran against Jefferson. Now, how it used to work back then, this is important, so pay attention. It used to be that whoever got second place in the election became vice president. It wasn't a separate vote like it is today. Now it's been changed, but just imagine if that rule was kept today. Nothing would really get done because everyone would just be arguing with each other. Honestly, that's kind of how it is today. But still, it'd probably be worse. So John Adams won somehow, and Jefferson, remember I told you he was important. I just told you to remember him. Okay, I didn't need to do that. I'm sorry. So John Adams was president and Jefferson was vice president. There's not really much I can say about Adams's presidency. One of the big things, the XYZ affairs, I think that was handled. He sent basically he sent some diplomats, but the French said that, okay, they'd stop doing it if you bribed us. Fortunately, he was able to handle diplomatically, and no war ever went out. So, good. But John Adams was a little paranoid that this might cause problems. So he passed two laws that fortunately only really last as long as his presidency. But the Alien Act and the Alien Sedition Acts. The Alien Act was was basically a bunch of bans on immigration, hence it being called the Alien Act. You see, now, however, it only really affected people if we were at war. Now, we never went to war during this period, so we were good. However, the Sedition Act was a little different. Basically, it made it illegal to criticize certain members of certain groups of the government. I think it was the president, Congress, or anything. So you can't criticize them in any way. However, Jefferson wasn't held to the same idea of criticism. He was totally free game. That was because Jefferson and Adams were both leaders of their political parties. So the short-lived Federalists, Adams's party, the short-lived Federalists, and crap, my brain just went. And Jefferson's Democratic Republicans. And the reason they're called Democratic Republicans, because historically I think they were called Republicans, but they were more democratic. So, Democratic Republicans. And these acts, these were just really terrible acts. Honestly, that was stupid. And Jefferson really fought against it, and it also made him really popular in the next election. He almost lost, not to Adams. Adams had no chance at that point, due to a lot of criticism, especially from people from his own party, like Hamilton. And, of course, Aaron Burr was also one of the bigger ones, was basically the bigger opponent, but after Hamilton, I think we all know the story. Hamilton gave him basically sponsored him, not sponsored, but endorsed Jefferson, and it was basically able to turn the tide. Jefferson, I'm just going to say it right now, Jefferson was extremely racist, and it was normal for the time. I get it, it's normal, but I don't know, he thought whites were superior to not just African Americans, but also Native Americans. However, his ideas were to reduce the size of the government. Okay, sure. Lower taxes. Yes, lowering taxes, always great. Shrink the military. He was able to do this. May not be the best choice, but... And enable agriculture. Because, okay, like I mentioned, Jefferson wanted this utopia of farmers. The reason for farmers, because farmers were pretty free to do what they wanted. And what I mean by that is, farmers don't normally have bosses. Maybe people work on the farm, but, everyone's a farmer, and then they sell maybe internationally? I don't know. The whole thing, when you really think about it, is kind of stupid. But I do give Jefferson credit for the Louisiana Purchase and the Declaration of Independence. He was also very smart. Some stupid ideas, but one of his biggest problems was the Embargo Act, which honestly kind of France and Britain were basically stealing sailors from our ships, and since we shrunk the size of the military, what ended up happening was we didn't have as much to protect them. And so Jefferson's idea was to just stop trading with them. Well, they found other people they could trade with, and it barely affected them. In fact, if it did anything, it ruined our economy. So Jefferson's gonna get pretty high on my list, but some of these just put him somewhat lower. I don't think he gets. I think in my opinion, Jefferson is a little overrated. Honestly, no, maybe not overrated. Overrated, I don't think. But I think he gets more credit. He's hyped up a little more. That's what I'll say. He's hyped up a little more than he really should be. I'm not going to say he's mediocre, because he definitely wasn't. And he wasn't terrible. That's not true either. But I'm not going to say he was as good as some other people like to say he is. Okay. We're almost done. I promise. James Madison. Okay, let's move on to James Madison. Sorry, I'm reading over my notes. So, James Madison, father of the Constitution, most of the ideas, that was him. Good on you, J. Madison, good on you. Jimmy Madison, as the long dead musical we were gonna put on called him. That was a stupid name. I'm sorry. I regret that. And being stuck in quarantine, it's not great. Shared some of also kind of shared Jefferson's views, maybe not on the farm utopia, but smaller government, low taxes, shrinking the military. However, the shrinking of the military part would kind of become a problem when the War of 1812 came around. The War of 1812 is probably a pretty forgettable one, but it's pretty forgettable, honestly. I didn't know too much about it until we heard that joke, that weird video where the person's like, what year was the War of 1812? Because it's obvious. Basically, the War of 1812 was the first war, not the first war we ever fought, but the first war that was declared by Congress. Because the Revolutionary War, Congress didn't exist at the time. The Continental Congress did, but not the Congress we know and tolerate today? Yeah, sure, tolerate sounds good. I don't want to say love or hate, but tolerate. So, basically, we then had this. So, the War of 1812 come around. Little foolish to have Madison kind of, a lot of people were war hawks. Madison, I'm not going to really call hawk, but he definitely advocated for the war. He really kind of wanted it. Well, he didn't want it, but he knew we kind of had to do it. Not saying he was a little foolish doing it. We weren't really able to handle the British, and we lost that war. However, two important figures William Henry Harrison and Andrew Jackson became really popular after this war, which will come into play later, specifically the next episode. But at this point, Madison is pretty. It gets higher due to the Constitution. How and it was he was also very intelligent. He was it's kind of like that nerdy friend you have that you kind of pick on all the time, but he was still cool and he's still smart and he helps you a lot. But yeah, that was basically Madison. So let's end this video off. I tell you, tell me how. So first off, a little fun trivia. If I asked you to look at the Washington crossing the Delaware, if I asked you how many presidents were in that picture, you'd probably say 1, right? Well, you're incorrect. Or you might say 2 if you said 2, good job. Now for those of you who said 1, it's fine. It's a common you probably didn't know this guy, James James Monroe. He's the guy holding the flag in that picture. Now, actually, they didn't do that, but, you know, that's who it is. James Monroe was, of course, our fifth, we just had the fourth, and the one who will be ending out this video. James Monroe was pretty average, in my opinion. The era of good feelings put some pretty hot, get some pretty good standing. You know, it's honestly just a. I mean, the economy was good, then the economy kind of got worse after that. But you know, also it's worth mentioning the industrial age was kind of going on during his presidency, and he kind of embraced that. So, good on him. The Monroe Doctrine, which is basically telling foreign affairs, like, listen, hey, no more colonies in here. Except for Spain, because Cuba, they got Cuba, but it was, like, kind of last minute. So, they were able to kind of squeak by this rule. Then, of course, the Missouri Compromise, which I think was a decent compromise to get going. Yeah, he didn't come up with it, but he helped get it going, which basically prevented... Which was what it's supposed to do was make Missouri... Basically, in the compromise, Missouri would become a slave state, because back in the day, it was slave and free states. Slave state would be... And then Maine would be created and become a free state. And everything in the South, across the line, would be slave states, and then the rest would be free states. Now, this would become problematic later when we get all the new territory. But for now, we're going to move on. I'll also give him credit for Florida. You know, he was able to get us Florida, so, you know, Florida, yeah. And that kind of tops off our video. So that was my opinions on Washington through Monroe. Washington, Adams, gosh, can't talk today. Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe. Tomorrow we'll be covering Quincy Adams, Jackson, Van Buren, Henry Harrison, and of course, Tyler, the first vice president to become president through death. Not through them dying, the other president dying. So I just want to thank you guys for watching. Also, again, I forgot to mention this, all the presidents will be ranked at the end of this series. I don't know if that'll be a separate video or the same one as the last one, but depends on how long it turns out to be. So, have a wonderful day in quarantine, and I'll see you guys next time with the next episode of this series. Bye!